As icons and vectors get reused across layouts and components, they don't always work everywhere out of the box. So in this lesson, we're going to cover how to use variables in Framer to design flexible vectors that adapt to multiple visual styles without the need to create new icons. In the last lesson, we focused on organizing and building vectors so they're clean and reusable. Now, we're going to build on that foundation by applying variables to our vector sets. But before we get there, let's quickly define what a variable actually is. In Framer, a variable acts like a placeholder for a property value, things like fill color or stroke width, and bring it to the surface when selecting an instance of a vector set or component. That way, we can override the value of that property on a per instance basis without affecting the others. And Framer gives us different properties we can apply variables to, depending on the style of our icons. For example, in this vector set, I'm working with a few common styles: outline, filled, and a hybrid of the two. Let's start by selecting the outlined icon, then head over to the Layers panel to take a closer look. If we expand the icon, we can see all of its individual paths. From here, I can select a single path to adjust its style properties, or select all of the paths and group them together using Command G like in the last lesson. So with this new group selected, let's go ahead and add a variable to the stroke width by heading over to the Properties panel and clicking on Width, then Create Variable. Now when we use this icon in a project, we can adjust the stroke width as needed, giving us much more flexibility without creating additional versions of the icon. Next, let's look at the filled version of this icon. For this one, I've already added variables to both the fill and opacity properties, which allow us to control the icon's color and transparency by using the same approach we just used for the stroke width. This works great for icons that are entirely filled or entirely outlined, but when we're working with hybrid or duotone icons, we often need more control. For example, what if we want to change the opacity of the fill without affecting the stroke? Well, that's where fill alpha comes in. So looking at this third icon, we have both a stroke and a fill. Instead of adjusting the overall opacity, I'll select the elements that have fills applied to them and then add a fill alpha property by heading to the Style section of the Properties panel, clicking the plus icon, and then Fill Alpha. Now, as I drag the slider, we can see the fill becoming more or less transparent, while the stroke stays exactly the same. This gives us precise control over the visual hierarchy within the icon, letting us soften or emphasize parts without changing its structure or creating separate versions. One of the biggest advantages of using variables is that combining them can allow us to switch between outline, filled, and duotone styles effectively. For example, an outline style might rely entirely on stroke, with the fill alpha set to 0, while a filled style would do the opposite, using a solid fill with little or no stroke. And a duotone style could utilize both. And because all of this is driven by variables, we can change the style just by updating the values. Okay, so up to this point, we've been using variables to handle stylistic changes. But when the overall structure of an icon needs to change, that's when icon variations should come into play. A good rule of thumb is use variables for stylistic adjustments and use variations for structural differences. So if the underlying shape stays the same and we're just changing how it looks, variables are usually the best choice. But if paths are added, removed, or fundamentally different, that's a job for a whole new variation. And that's it. Now you've seen how variables can empower a single icon to support multiple styles, keeping your library consistent, flexible, and easy to scale. In the next lesson, we'll take these icons a step further by covering how to animate them, adding some motion and personality to our designs. I'll see you there.